He and I slept head to toe, woke up face to face, and didn't move. It's funny how the most pivotal moments in our lives often come disguised as ordinary circumstances. For Alex, a talented but painfully shy watercolor artist with a penchant for capturing urban landscapes at dawn, that moment arrived on a crisp autumn morning in a small cabin nestled among towering pines. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the bustling metropolis where two souls crossed paths in the most serendipitous of ways. Alex's apartment was a reflection of their personality, organized chaos, with canvases leaning against exposed brick walls, shelves overflowing with art books, and large windows that captured the perfect northern light. At 32, Alex had built a modest reputation in the local art scene, but struggled with the social aspects of promotion and networking. Quiet and contemplative by nature, Alex found solace in the silent conversation between brush and paper, where vulnerability could exist without judgment. Jordan, on the other hand, lived in a perpetual state of motion. A musician whose fingers could coax melodies from virtually any instrument, Jordan possessed the kind of magnetic confidence that drew people in effortlessly. Performing at local venues 3 nights a week, Jordan's apartment was rarely silent, filled with either impromptu jam sessions or the constant experimentation of new compositions. Yet beneath this extroverted facade lay a person who struggled with genuine intimacy, preferring the safety of surface-level connections over the terrifying prospect of being truly known. These two seemingly opposite souls might never have intersected if not for a sudden downpour and a shortage of seating at Whistle Notes, a coffee shop known for its exceptional espresso and rotating gallery of local artists. Alex had been sketching quietly in the corner when Jordan, guitar case in hand and thoroughly soaked from the rain, scanned the crowded space for somewhere to sit. "Mind if I join you?" Jordan had asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from Alex. That simple question would ultimately alter the trajectory of both their lives, though neither could have possibly known it at the time. What began as a conversation about the merits of different brewing methods evolved into a 3-hour discussion spanning art theory, musical composition, and the peculiar habit they shared of collecting vintage postcards. By the time they realized the cafe was closing, a foundation had been laid, one that would grow stronger with each subsequent meeting. Their friendship blossomed organically over the following months, punctuated by late-night phone calls, collaborative projects where Alex's visuals complemented Jordan's compositions, and the gradual dismantling of the walls they'd both constructed around their hearts. There were moments, fleeting but unmistakable, when something deeper seemed to simmer beneath the surface of their friendship. The lingering touch when Jordan handed Alex a cup of tea. The way Alex's gaze would sometimes drift to Jordan's lips mid-conversation. The electricity that charged the air when they found themselves alone together. Yet neither dared to acknowledge these moments, each harboring their own fears about disrupting the precious equilibrium they'd established. Let me explain why this matters. In a world increasingly defined by digital connections and superficial interactions, the authentic bond between Alex and Jordan represented something increasingly rare. They had found in each other not just a friend, but a witness to their truest selves, someone who understood their creative processes and celebrated their successes without competition or judgment. This kind of connection doesn't come along often, which perhaps explains their mutual reluctance to risk it for something more. The catalyst for change arrived unexpectedly in the form of an invitation. Their mutual friend Eli had recently inherited a small cabin from his grandfather and invited a small group to spend a weekend there before winter set in. What was meant to be a gathering of 6 quickly dwindled to 3 when illness and work commitments forced the others to cancel. Then, mere hours before departure, Eli called with news of a family emergency that required his immediate attention. "You two should still go," he insisted. "The cabin's all prepped, and it would be a shame to waste it. Just lock up when you leave Sunday." And so Alex and Jordan found themselves alone, driving through winding forest roads as autumn leaves created a kaleidoscope of colors around them. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did between them, though there was an undercurrent of nervous energy that neither acknowledged. The cabin, when they finally arrived, was charming in its rustic simplicity, a main room with a stone fireplace, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom, and a single bedroom with one double bed. "I can take the couch," Jordan offered immediately, setting down their duffel bag. Don't be ridiculous, Alex replied, trying to sound casual. The bed's plenty big enough. We can sleep head to toe if it makes you more comfortable. This practical solution seemed reasonable enough in theory. They spent the day hiking nearby trails, collecting pine cones, and taking photos of the spectacular fall foliage. As evening descended, they cooked pasta on the ancient stove, opened a bottle of wine, and played board games by firelight. The simplicity of these activities belied the complex emotions brewing beneath the surface. Every laugh shared, every accidental touch, every moment of comfortable silence, all served to heighten the awareness that something was shifting between them. When exhaustion finally claimed them around midnight, they awkwardly arranged themselves on opposite ends of the bed, Jordan's head near the footboard, Alex's at the headboard, a respectable distance maintained between their bodies. "Good night," Jordan murmured, voice slightly muffled by the pillow. "Good night," Alex responded, switching off the bedside lamp and plunging the room into darkness. Sleep came surprisingly easily, perhaps aided by the fresh mountain air and physical exertion of the day's hike. Dreams wove themselves through Alex's subconscious. Vivid images of waterfalls and forest paths, of music floating through trees, of Jordan's smile illuminated by firelight. These pleasant visions accompanied Alex through the night until consciousness began to return with the first light of dawn. It was the warmth that Alex noticed first, a comforting presence that seemed to envelop the entire body. Then came the realization that something had drastically changed during the night. No longer were they positioned head to toe. Somehow, in the unconscious choreography of sleep, they had both turned and shifted until they were face to face, their bodies curved toward each other like quotation marks, close enough that their breath mingled in the cool morning air. Alex's eyes flew open to find Jordan already awake, gazing back with an expression that contained equal parts surprise, tenderness, and uncertainty. This was the moment, the pivotal juncture where a decision had to be made. Pull away and laugh it off? Pretend to still be asleep? Make a joke to diffuse the tension? All these options raced through Alex's mind in the span of seconds. But neither moved. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. Rather, it felt charged with possibility, as if the universe had conspired to create this perfect moment of truth where masks could no longer be maintained. Jordan's eyes, usually so confident and bright, now revealed a vulnerability that Alex had rarely glimpsed. There was a question in those eyes, one that didn't need to be spoken aloud to be understood. Minutes passed this way, or perhaps it was only seconds that stretched into eternity. Time seemed to lose its linear quality in the sacred space they had inadvertently created. Outside, a bird began its morning song, its melody filtering through the cabin windows along with the gentle glow of sunrise. Still, they remained motionless, each afraid that the slightest movement might shatter this fragile moment of connection. "I've been wanting to wake up like this," Jordan finally whispered, breaking the silence with words that seemed to hang in the air between them, honest and exposed. Alex's heart thundered so loudly it seemed impossible that Jordan couldn't hear it. "Me too," came the reply, barely audible but unmistakably sincere. The admission, simple as it was, changed everything and nothing simultaneously. No dramatic gestures followed, no passionate declarations or impulsive actions. Instead, they continued to lie there, studying each other's faces as if seeing them for the first time, cataloging details that had always been present but perhaps never fully appreciated. The small scar above Jordan's eyebrow from a childhood accident. The constellation of freckles across Alex's nose that intensified in summer months. The way Jordan's eyes contained flecks of amber among the brown. The slight asymmetry of Alex's smile. Their peaceful moment was abruptly interrupted by the sound of a car door slamming outside. Startled, they both sat up, the intimate bubble they'd created suddenly punctured by the intrusion of the outside world. Who could that be? Alex wondered aloud, reaching for a sweater. Eli, maybe? Jordan suggested, already moving toward the window to investigate. Indeed, it was Eli, whose family emergency had resolved more quickly than anticipated. "Hope you guys don't mind me crashing your private getaway," he called out cheerfully as they opened the door to greet him, completely oblivious to what he had interrupted. "Brought breakfast." He held up a bag of pastries from a bakery in town, his expression so genuinely pleased with himself that neither Alex nor Jordan had the heart to express their disappointment at his arrival. The dynamic shifted immediately with Eli's presence. The intimate conversation that had begun was left hanging, unfinished, as they fell into the familiar patterns of their three-way friendship. Eli regaled them with stories of his family drama while they prepared coffee and set out plates for the pastries. On the surface, everything appeared normal, but undercurrents of tension and unspoken words electrified the air between Alex and Jordan. Throughout the day, they exchanged glances laden with meaning, seeking private moments that Eli unwittingly interrupted with suggestions for activities or topics of conversation. By mid-afternoon, misunderstandings had begun to take root. Jordan interpreted Alex's sudden quietness as regret over their morning vulnerability. Alex mistook Jordan's enthusiastic engagement with Eli's stories as relief at having escaped an awkward situation. Each retreated slightly into themselves, building protective walls brick by brick as the hours passed. "You two seem weird today," Eli observed bluntly as they packed up to leave the following afternoon. "Did something happen before I got here?" "Nothing happened," Jordan answered too quickly, avoiding Alex's gaze. "Everything's fine," Alex added with a forced smile that didn't reach the eyes. Eli looked between them skeptically but didn't press further. The drive back to the city was filled with Eli's chatter from the back seat, while an ocean of unspoken words swelled between the two in front. By the time they reached Alex's apartment building, the opportunity for honesty seemed to have passed entirely, replaced by a politeness that felt more painful than any argument could have been. "I'll call you tomorrow," Jordan said as Alex gathered belongings from the trunk, the words sounding more like a question than a promise. "Sure," Alex replied noncommittally, already turning toward the building's entrance, unable to bear another moment of this new, uncomfortable distance. 3 days passed without contact, the longest they had gone without speaking since meeting. Alex threw themselves into painting, producing dark, turbulent landscapes that reflected their inner turmoil. Jordan composed a melancholy piece that their bandmates refused to perform, claiming it was too depressing for our brand. The separation was physical but also emotional, each convinced they had misread the signals, each too proud or frightened to make the first move toward reconciliation. It was music that ultimately bridged the gap between them. Alex had been avoiding their usual haunts, fearful of an accidental encounter, but a gallery opening required attendance. The small venue had hired live musicians for the event, a detail Alex hadn't known until arriving to find Jordan's band setting up in the corner. Their eyes met across the room, and the world seemed to pause momentarily, the crowd between them fading into insignificance. Throughout the evening, Jordan's music seemed to speak directly to Alex, each note carrying messages that words had failed to convey. When the band took a break, Jordan found Alex standing before a particularly striking photograph of intertwined tree branches. "It reminds me of us," Jordan said quietly, nodding toward the image. "Separate but connected, growing in different directions but from the same soil." Alex turned, finally meeting Jordan's gaze directly. "I've missed you." "I've missed you too," Jordan admitted. "More than I expected to. More than makes sense for just a friend." There it was, the truth they had been dancing around for months, finally spoken aloud. The gallery hummed with conversation around them, but they might as well have been alone in the universe for all the attention they paid to their surroundings. "Can we go somewhere and talk?" Alex asked. "Really talk, without interruptions or misunderstandings?" Jordan nodded, relief washing over features that had been tense with uncertainty. "My set ends in 20 minutes. Wait for me." "I'd wait much longer than that," Alex replied, the simple statement carrying the weight of a much greater promise. They ended up at an all-night diner, sliding into a booth far from other patrons, ordering coffee they were too nervous to drink. For a moment, they sat in silence, the magnitude of the conversation ahead seeming almost too daunting to begin. That morning at the cabin, Jordan finally said, voice steady despite the visible tremor in their hands, "When we woke up face to face, that wasn't an accident for me. I mean, I didn't plan it, but I wasn't asleep when I turned toward you. I wanted to be closer. I've wanted that for a long time." Alex's breath caught. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "Fear," Jordan admitted simply. "Fear of losing what we already had. Fear of not being enough. Fear of how completely I've fallen for you without even meaning to. I'm scared too, Alex confessed, reaching across the table to take Jordan's hand. Terrified, actually. But I'm more afraid of never knowing what we could be together than I am of taking the risk. They talked until sunrise, excavating years of insecurities, examining the foundations of their friendship, and carefully, tentatively beginning to build something new upon that solid ground. They spoke of practical concerns, how their creative lives might merge or remain separate, what to tell their friends, the potential complications of a relationship that began as such a deep friendship. But underlying all these discussions was a current of joy, of rightness, of coming home to a place they hadn't known they were seeking. When Jordan finally walked Alex to the apartment door, as morning lights spilled across the city, there was no awkwardness in their goodbye. Instead, there was a sweet, unhurried kiss that felt simultaneously like a beginning and a continuation, acknowledgement that while their relationship was evolving, its essence remained unchanged. "I'll call you later," Jordan said, echoing the words from days earlier, but with none of the uncertainty. "I'll answer," Alex promised with a smile. In the weeks that followed, they navigated their new relationship with a mixture of excitement and careful consideration. They agreed to move slowly, to protect the precious foundation they had built over time. Jordan began leaving a toothbrush at Alex's apartment. Alex cleared out a drawer for Jordan's things. They collaborated on a multimedia exhibition that received critical acclaim, their artistic voices strengthening rather than competing with each other. There were challenges, of course. Jordan's touring schedule created periods of separation. Alex's introversion sometimes clashed with Jordan's need for social stimulation. They argued about dirty dishes and music volume and whether plants belonged in the bedroom. But underlying these ordinary conflicts was an extraordinary commitment to understanding each other, to communicating honestly even when it was difficult, to choosing each other day after day. 6 months after that fateful morning at the cabin, they returned, this time intentionally alone. The autumn colors had given way to winter's stark beauty, snow blanketing the landscape in pristine white. They built a fire in the stone fireplace, cooked the same pasta dish they had shared before, and opened a bottle of wine to celebrate half a year of loving each other openly. "Do you remember how we slept that first night?" Alex asked as they prepared for bed, a mischievous smile playing at the corners of their mouth. Jordan laughed, understanding immediately. "Head to toe, you mean? Seems rather unnecessary now, don't you think?" "Humor me," Alex insisted, arranging the pillows at opposite ends of the bed. "For old time's sake." With amused sighs, they positioned themselves as they had that first night, Jordan's head at the foot of the bed, Alex's at the headboard. They switched off the lights and whispered goodnight into the darkness. But unlike before, there was no pretense of maintaining this arrangement. Within moments, they had both turned, meeting in the middle of the bed, face to face and heart to heart. "Much better," Jordan murmured, brushing a strand of hair from Alex's forehead. "We wasted so much time being afraid," Alex observed, tracing the outline of Jordan's jaw with gentle fingers. "Not wasted," Jordan corrected softly. "We were building something important, even then. Learning each other. Preparing for this." As they drifted toward sleep in each other's arms, Alex reflected on the strange and beautiful journey that had brought them to this point. How a chance meeting in a crowded coffee shop had set in motion a series of events that would transform two separate lives into one shared story. How the most significant moment of that story had come in the quiet vulnerability of a morning when they woke up face to face and chose not to move away. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest of choices, not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with the quiet courage to remain present in a moment of truth. For Alex and Jordan, that choice had opened the door to a love that continued to deepen with each passing day, a love built on friendship, strengthened by honesty, and sustained by the daily decision to turn toward each other rather than away. As the snow fell softly outside the cabin windows, they slept peacefully, no longer positioned head to toe, no longer afraid of the closeness they had both secretly craved. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. Two artists whose greatest masterpiece was the life they were creating, brush stroke by brush stroke, note by note, moment by precious moment. In the years that followed, they would often look back on that autumn morning as the turning point in their story, Not because it was when they fell in love, but because it was when they finally found the courage to acknowledge the love that had been growing all along. And in that acknowledgement, they discovered that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply to stay still, to remain present in a moment of vulnerability, and to allow ourselves to be truly seen by another soul who has chosen, against all odds and uncertainties, to see us. Total _char_count, 18,876.